I could not believe it when my 4-year-old asked the question. This was the same question he had been asking for weeks now. Before it was cute. Now it was only making me angry. We had delivered on our promise, yet still he was asking for more. I, like so many other parents, was wondering if my child would ever learn to be content and to stop asking for more. It seems as though everywhere we turn in our society, kids have a want problem. They want more toys, more screen time, more attention. But perhaps we as parents should be asking ourselves, is there a holy kind of discontent? Is there a healthy place for want in our kids? Is there an attitude of dissatisfaction that we should be nurturing in them? I found myself asking these questions as we drove through the Rocky Mountains with our 3 young boys. Our oldest boy, 4-year-old Ezekiel, had been asking us several times a day if we could go hike and run in the mountains. We woke weary that morning. Rubbing groggy eyes and packing snacks into our bag, we drove up into the breathtaking mountain town of Estes Park, Colorado. Our boys were all but bouncing in their car seats with anticipation as we drove through the valley framed by jagged, steep rock faces and ascended up into the Rocky Mountains. After making a mandatory stop at the donut shop, my husband and I settled into wooden Adirondack chairs next to the duck pond at the local coffee shop. We relaxed with hot cups of coffee as my husband bounced our 4-month-old son on his knee, and our 2 older boys tossed corn kernels to the eager ducks. Luminous green pine trees and aspens just beginning to transform into golden hues stood tall on the mountains before us. They were a brilliant backdrop to our picturesque morning. That is when our 4-year-old came to me with this question. "Mama, can we go to the mountains now?" he asked me. I glanced from his yearning eyes to the mountain peaks towering up to the clouds around us. "Zeke, we are in the mountains," I told him. "But I want to go to those mountains." He pointed high up into the jagged rock faces at elevations I was certain one would require climbing gear to reach, not to mention a level of courage that I lacked. "But Buddy," I scoured my brain for an explanation that might satisfy his young and longing heart. "We are in the mountains. Do you remember that we had to drive way up here, and we kept going higher and higher? Well, now we are in the mountains." He hardly looked satisfied. Again and again, my son would point higher up into intimidating summits eclipsing the clouds above. No matter what altitude we took him to, he wanted to go higher still. He wanted more. The psalmist describes it as a wanton craving in Psalm 106. God had masterfully delivered his people from the hand of the Egyptians. He had provided absolutely everything that they needed. He had performed miracles right before their eyes. And yet, they had this insatiable craving for more. The psalmist points out, "Our fathers, when they were in Egypt, did not consider your wondrous works. They did not remember your steadfast love." I heard my son's insistent requests for more, and all I saw was a bad attitude, a relentless discontent, and a lack of appreciation for the beauty surrounding him. It wasn't until later, on a desolate desert path, that I finally began to understand my son's discontent as more than just a wanton craving. My husband had pointed out the trail a few days earlier, and today he had encouraged me to go and explore it by myself. I strapped on my running pack, tied on my shoes, and took off down the path. The trail wound along a harsh red rock wall that towered high with ragged edges pointing at the sky. They acted as a natural barbed wire fence and a barrier between the Colorado foothills and the front range of the Rocky Mountains. I arrived at what the map called the keyhole. It was a natural window in this rocky fence, a frame around the breathtaking view of the Great Rocky Mountains. This was the turnaround point, and yet the trail was beckoning me to continue. There I stood with the path to the right leading back to the parking lot, or the path to the left winding down into the valley, and then up into a steep ascent on the other side. My skin was hot and turning red under the harsh afternoon sun, but I could not stop. I turned left and began running down into the valley. As I rounded every corner, I found myself taken aback with complete enamor and awe. "Wow." I whispered it through exhausted breaths as more mountain peaks made themselves visible with my climb. I wanted more. This is when I finally got it. I understood my son's relentless desire for more. His longing was far greater than the type of wanton craving of the Israelites. It was a holy kind of discontent. I have so much to learn from him. It was not that he wasn't impressed with the mountains. It was that he was impressed. He had glimpsed God's masterful creation, and it had left him with a holy discontent, an insatiable longing for more. Scripture says that exposure to God's creation leaves us with no excuse in coming to know him. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. This is why I pray that my children will always have a relentless longing to experience more of God's creation, because it leads them right into the arms of their masterful Creator. And just as the psalmist penned it in Psalm 95, I understand that amidst God's magnificent creation is where my children will be ushered into a life of praise and worship. In his hand are the depths of the earth. The heights of the mountains are his also. The sea is his, for he has made it, and his hands form the dry land. Oh, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord, our Maker.